Hi, I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and I'm here at Core London for my CEO interview slot. Today, my guest is Marshall Abbott, the CEO of Arrow Exploration. Welcome, Marshall. Good to have you back again.
Thanks, Melky. Great to be with you.
And I'm glad I'm not with you because you tell me it's minus 35 where you are.
Yeah, that keeps us alive.
Good stuff. Before we go into the program for this year, which I'm really looking forward to cutting into, I wonder if you could just tell the viewers how your successful season of drilling went last year and how production rates were so good.
Certainly. So we were very active in the Llanos Basin in Colombia, specifically our Tapir block, where we're the operator and a 50% working interest. We drilled 11 for 11 successful oil wells, focusing in on both the Carbonara and the Ubaki reservoirs. And these wells typically come on, if we let them come on, at 1,000 barrels a day. We're much more conservative in doing so. And so we kind of trim them back to about 360 barrels a day. And because of our stewardship of the reservoirs that we deal with, we were able to double production very comfortably and more than double reserves.
Well, that's great, and it must have been really, really good to be able to hit all those targets so well. As we look at the 24 program that you recently announced, you've put in 15 wells and $45 million worth of capital budget, which is all paid for and done and dusted. Why don't you break down where that is going to be spent?
Sure. So of the 15 wells, and we've had that budget approved, of course, by our board, we are drilling primarily infill and development wells based on the discoveries we made last year. And then we've also saved room for some very low-risk exploration wells that are proximal to our Carrizales Norte pool and the Rio Cravo Este pool. So we're pretty excited with the low-risk program that we've got going forward.
You would say that most of the program is low risk in Tapir and in Carrizales Norte. I'd like to ask you about the horizontal wells before we go into the other ones, because I was very excited last year when we spoke that you said that you'll be able to start wheeling out drilling horizontal wells. You're planning to do 3 of those to begin with, and maybe a few more. What's the plan for that?
Well, that's a great question, Melky. So we are planning 3 horizontals initially. We are building a dedicated horizontal pad that's under construction right now, and we intend to have the first well spud towards the end of March. That drilling pad will actually be ready the middle of March. And so the target is the 60-foot reservoir that we've encountered in 3 wells in the Ubaki formation.
Right.
That oil comes out fast, and from a vertical perspective, IP rates are about 1,200 barrels a day. From a horizontal perspective, IP rates are going to be in excess of 2,000, 2,500 barrels a day. In fact, we've just done a reservoir simulation, and based on the permeability of this reservoir and the quality of the oil, we'll be able to pull on these wells much harder with less drawdown. So we're pretty excited with that program. And yeah, we've got 3 dedicated, but we'll have a cash surplus by end of year that allow us to be a little more aggressive on the Ubaki reservoir.
Indeed, and I mean that sounds so good. But I mean, in particular, you're going to be flat out on Tapir, aren't you? You've got 2 rigs drilling all the year, and maybe a third as well. There, is that right?
That's accurate. So we will be spudding about this time next week. The 4th development well at Carrizales Norte. The 5th well is going to be a test well to the west of the existing pool. Seismic tells us that this is a rather sizable extension to the Carrizales Norte Ubaki pool, and that had 40 million barrels in place, and we potentially have the ability to double that number. So we're pretty excited with that plan.
You'll excuse my ignorance here, and also my my language ability, because are these some of the step outs and prospects that I looked at when I read your report, such as the Matagarata or the Bacuena and also the Caracol and Noroeste. Now, are
Yes,
these the ones you're talking about?
those are the three sexy targets, if you will. So let's talk about Noroeste. That's the westward extension of the Ubaki Pool at Carrizales Norte. So that's very low risk. And if we penetrate the reservoir west of the primary fault and it doesn't work, we'll plug that well back and sidetrack to another 200 meters to where we know the reservoir exists. So
Yeah,
that's very low risk. The Bacchiano prospect is an extension of the Carrizales fault, and we've got a mirror image of what we penetrated in the Carrizales Norte pool. So the Bacchiano is quite accessible. We've got a road that goes to it. We're building the pad, and that in itself could add significant reserves. And then the Mataguafa development exploration well, if I can call it that. We call it a Developcat. We're coming up dip of 2 wells that did 600,000 barrels. So the 3D has paid its dividends over and over again. And we see quite a bit of potential up dip of those 2 wells. So that's very low risk. And it's an existing pad with an existing road. So access is very straightforward.
that's brilliant. So you said at the beginning of the interview, actually, that the 3D has been a massive help to you. And obviously, again, here, this is where it's proving its worth. Have you got lots more to work for, or are you going to be starting to do another program of 3D seismic in other parts of the acreage?
Well, a great question, just to address the additional seismic. So on the Tapir block at the southern end, we've got about 25 square miles of area that has not been covered with 3D. We do have a rather coarse grid of 2D seismic data that indicates there are some significant structures up against fault. So it's fault bounded 3-way closure. You need 3D to get after that. And so we anticipate shooting that additional 3D, which would be about a $5 million touch, $2.5 million net to us in 2025 early.
Right.
And from the prospectivity matrix, the 3D that we have shot over basically 75 square miles has given us drilling inventory that will keep us busy for 3 to 4 years.
Amazing, isn't it? And so just by going in a bit next spring with another, in a year's time with some more, you'll add presumably 2 or 3 years to that. I mean, you've talked about a 10 or longer year process here, haven't you, in the past, and it looks just like that.
Yeah, we're focused on the long term. So, it's internal goal of ours is to get to 10,000 barrels a day as quickly as we can, and we think, based on the assets we have in our quiver at the moment, that's quite attainable. We're excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Pardo, we talked about again when I came over and before, and you were sort of, if the right expression might be, you blew hot and cold about it for a while. You had successful wells there, but they each had a little problem with various drilling problems. But you're planning to continue working there in the next few months?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as you may recall, we're still working with the regulator, ANH, to get an extension to the Oso Pardo block, because we believe the oil accumulation is much bigger than what exists on our land. We did drill 2 wells. We had 3 producers prior to that. We drilled 2 wells. One of them came in about 100 feet low to what we had envisioned, and it was still hydrocarbon bearing, which is a very positive sign.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of a stratigraphic component to the reserve base there. But as we were drilling down to the target called the Umir Formation, we lost circulation through a thief zone, and we had to really add density to the drilling mud, which created damage at the reservoir face. And so those wells, instead of being 400 barrels a day or 100 barrel a day wells, and what we plan to do is a stimulation program, and we'll have that done by the end of the first quarter.
So the same problem happened in the 3 and the 4 well, yeah?
That's right. And we learned from the 3 well, we lost about 700 barrels into the reservoir. On the 4th well, we lost just a fraction of that, but the reservoir is still damaged, and we had upwards of 60 feet of net oil pay. We had oil over the shakers, and when we perforated, the perforating guns are covered in oil, so we were excited. But the rate just isn't there, and it's clear to us we damaged the reservoir. We're going to fix that.
Yeah. Is that a mud problem or just something your engineers will fix easy enough?
Yeah, I think the way we would go is we would run intermediate casing to just above the reservoir of interest, and that will protect us from losing a bunch of drilling mud.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to have a quick chat about the reserves, if I may. I know it's probably the wrong time in the calendar, because obviously the first question is, we saw a reserves number a while ago, which indicates to me that you're probably having a reserve figure being worked on at the moment by your experts. Have you got a 2P number, or your historic number is out of date, or where are you on reserves?
So we'll have the CPR done, the competent person report done by the middle of February. We did an interim reserve report after the Ubaki discovery at Carrizales Norte, and that amounted to 143 million of 2P reserves at 10% discount, which more than doubled company reserves. So the existing reserves were about 137 million. So we're in a very good spot with respect to reserve additions, and we expect to add to that in material sense through the balance of the year.
Is Colombia have a sort of general 10% 2P discounted number across the board, or is it field by field basis?
It's generally a 10% NPV, yes.
Yeah.
On 2P, and as you know, the AIM exchange likes to have a 3P number as well, but
yeah,
I don't want to touch that at the moment.
Yeah, but it's too big to handle, too tough to handle.
That's right.
To me, that means you've got a big inventory of stock effectively to drill out over the next 2-3 years, given all the things we've talked about here.
We're in a very fertile part of the Llanos Basin, highly sought after. The 3D that we shot was really the donut hole of a series of 3Ds shot by competitors in and around us. And so there's been quite a bit of interest in the luck that we've had. We've been congratulated by Ecopetrol and their regulator for further discoveries, and we certainly intend to expand upon that.
And your major shareholder came in with the money when the warrants were needed to be exercised.
That's right. And so that warrant exercise injected another $9 million into the bank account.
Well, it's so exciting, Has the political situation changed at all? I mean, obviously in South America it changes every country every week, but Colombia, is it relatively stable at the moment?
I think in the Latin American context, Colombia is solid as you could possibly get. There is a left-leaning government, but they've been rather benign when it comes to hydrocarbon extraction. There was a movement by the government to disallow deducting royalties from revenue. That went to the Supreme Court and it was struck down. So that was very material to all of the operators. And so we don't really expect any more interference from that government. They've got another 2 years in their mandate.
Yeah, I remember we did a few months or two ago, we did some, with help from your team, we revised the numbers a little bit because it became more favorable. And, the government is clearly, there's a lot of revenue to take from the oil industry. So it's a sort of difficult call for them, but they'd rather have the money.
It's the primary cash register of the country. There's no question.
Yeah. As we get towards the end, I mean, there's so much exciting stuff that you've already told me, Marshall. But as you know, what I like to do is to ask you to tell me where you think you'd like to see Arrow in the next 12 to 18 months. I would just preface that by saying, I think that because of the way investors have treated oil companies in the last year or so, it's been very difficult to judge because the shares should have been a good deal higher. But in terms of where you see the company on the ground, where would you like to see Arrow in 12 months to 18 months when we meet again?
So we would look towards exiting 2024. This is a dangerous position, but we would look to exit north of 6,000 barrels a day and having the ultimate goal of getting this company to 10,000 barrels a day, at which point, we would certainly seriously look at becoming a dividend issuer to reward our patient shareholder base. So we do have happy shareholders. At some point, there's going to be a catch up on Arrow stock performance.
I'm absolutely convinced of that myself, and yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's you deserve it. You've got a fantastic program coming up over the next few months, which I'm looking forward to being able to follow. I don't think I've missed anything. We've been through all the most exciting bits. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I close up on?
I would just like to say thank you, Malky, for being a sponsor of this company. And myself and the board of directors are very appreciative of the work that our staff, both in Calgary and Bogota, have done. We've got 9 staff in Calgary, 30 in Bogota. And they have wound their way through the bureaucracy with amazing efficiency. And it's showed in our results. So we're pretty happy with the people that we've got in the company, which is the driving force, I believe.
Well, that's great. And thank you very much indeed, Marshall, for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. So I've been Malcolm Graham Wood. I've been doing my CEO interview on core finance today. My guest has been Marshall Abbott, CEO of Arrow Exploration. Great to see you again, Marshall, and look forward to seeing you again soon.